everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to begin to answer a question that was left in the comments of my last video, which is how to get a musical theatre job. I am going to expand this a little bit to just any acting job in general because it's basically the same, it's just the particulars are different. But yeah, this is the beginnings of me answering that question. This is a question that can kind of be interpreted in two ways. There's what I think most people mean when they say, how do you get a job, which is focusing on the audition aspect. How do you prepare? What do you do in the room to make sure you have the best chance of landing a role, right? But then I think there's also another aspect, which especially if you're completely new to the world of acting, you might not be as aware of, which is the actual process from a job being listed or needed by a production to you as an actor accepting that role, right? That whole mechanism, there are also things that we as actors can do actively that influence other aspects of that process, or allow us to be thought of earlier on in that process, not just at the audition stage. So in this video, I'm going to be focusing on that kind of second interpretation of how a role gets cast, like all of the steps in that process, and what we as actors can do to add to us being considered in all of those relevant steps of the process. And then in a future video, I'm going to be going into the meat and potatoes of focusing in on that audition aspect, which is the main way that we have control over whether we get cast or not for any particular role. So I hope that is helpful for you. If you're down for that, stick around. I used to do show of the week, but like way back, and then I just haven't. So let's bring that back. Show of the week is Benjamin Button. I'm gonna link to some things in the description. Editing me remembered to do that. They're going to be releasing a cast album. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. It's such a good show. Oh my god. Okay, without further ado, without further ado is what I meant to say. Let's get into the video. I'm gonna look at my notes. Please forgive me. So, what is the actual chain of events from a production team being like, we need actors, to you being like, thank you so much for offering me the role, I accept? For this, I'm going to focus on closed auditions. If you would like a future video for open auditions or open calls, let me know in the comments and I can do that as a separate thing. But for this, I'm going to focus on closed auditions, which are the most common and, you know, the ones that if you want to, you know, have a career of any kind of description as an actor, you're gonna be needing to get to the point where you're doing closed auditions. So what is that process? What does it look like? I didn't put numbers on my notes, so I'm gonna lose it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 8 steps. It's 8 steps, guys. 8 is not a massive number, it's all fine. So step 1, a project, a production, gets to the stage in kind of the pre-production process where they need actors. This can either be like anything from a rehearsed reading all the way up to West End Broadway production or Marvel film, or, you know, it all levels and all sizes of production. Once they get to the point where they're like, we need actors to actually do this and either put this on for an audience or really understand what we're dealing with, if it's more of a kind of workshop early stage process in a project, yeah, they decide that they need some actors, and that's where we come in. Step 2 is that the creative team and or a casting director, if they want to hire a casting director, depending on the size of the project and the budget of the project, will write out a casting call, and they'll write out casting calls for each of the roles. This can either be specific, like named roles, or if it's a more of an ensemble thing, a casting call for however many ensemble members they need and what roles that they do within that, if it's multi-rolling or if it's whatever the specifics of that particular project are. These casting calls will include the things that are necessary for that role. So if a role needs any particular skills, if the role is for a character that needs to look a certain way, so this will be things like playing age, ethnicity, sometimes even things like height, thinking about, like, for example, if you were doing A Midsummer Night's Dream, Helena needs to be tall, Hermia needs to be short. It's in the text. So stipulations like that, like, must be a minimum of this height or a maximum of this height. Also in the casting call, if they have the information, they may put a little bit of information about the project as a whole, what the show's about, key dates, things like that. And these casting calls will usually be posted on some kind of casting site. So in the UK, the industry standard would be Spotlight as a casting site, but there are also websites like Mandy, Star Now, Backstage. Other regions of the world might have other specific casting sites as well. With smaller projects, you might even also get casting announcements on social media as well, with instructions of how to submit yourself, which is step 3. So step 3, the actor or the actor's agent sees a casting that we would be right for and submits us. So when I say right for, this is, you have the skills that are required, you're the right casting age, you're the right casting type, you look the way, if things like ethnicity or gender are specified, like you are that ethnicity or you are that gender, or those presentations, things like that. That's basically step 3, is you submit yourself. That's it. Step 4 is the casting director, if there is one, or the casting team receive the submissions that they receive, obviously. They receive all of those actor submissions and they decide who they want to audition. And the people who they would like to see audition, they send them an invitation to audition. That can either be an invitation to self-tape, an invitation to audition in person. If there's issues with everyone being able to get to the same place and time, sometimes that can even be Zoom auditions as well. Step 5 is the actor's audition. So again, depending on the scale of the production or the budget of the production, this can be a single audition or it can be multiple rounds of auditions. Increasingly since COVID, and I think just because A, it's cheaper, and B, they can see more people, there are a lot of productions where the first round will be a self-tape, but not always. Sometimes the first round can be straight in the room. If there are multiple rounds, usually at some point you will be in the room with the production team. And this can either be because there are multiple people who need to make the decision, and so only some of those people will be involved in the first round of casting, and then as you get further along in the process, the more important people who will actually be making decisions will then see the people who've gone past a certain stage in the audition process. This can sometimes be because the part involved requires really great chemistry with other roles. Going back to A Midsummer Night's Dream, for example, the 4 lovers, so Helena, Hermia, Demetrius and Lysander, you want those core 4 to have a really good, strong chemistry because the play revolves around them. So if you were casting A Midsummer Night's Dream, you may do an initial casting where you're just figuring out, okay, who might be a good Helena, who might be a good Hermia, Demetrius, Lysander, and then your recalls would be, okay, how do these people work together? I think that's all I have to say on that point. Yeah. Step 5 is, as an actor, you're either successful or unsuccessful. So with each audition you do, it can either be a yes, it can be a no, or it can be a recall. At some point, there are no more recalls, and then it's either a yes or a no. Step 7, so this is assuming that you got a yes. Because if you got a no, it ends at step 6, and you're like, okay, fine. If you got a yes, then you're on to step 7, and this is where you or your agent gets to negotiate anything that you may want to negotiate. So this can be things like non-availables, if there's a particular date during the time period of the production from rehearsals to the final performance or final day of shooting, that you are not available. You may need to negotiate those. This may also be if you want to negotiate things like pay. This could also be things like if you've auditioned for an understudy role, so either a part where you're understudying a larger part or just as an understudy, where you or your agent might want to negotiate for guaranteed performances. And then the production team will get back with either, yeah, we can put the money up to this, or no, we can't do that, we don't have the budget, no, we can't guarantee things. So if you are negotiating, be aware that they could say no. Step 8 is that after all of that negotiation, and if there has been any negotiation, you as the actor either accepts the offer or you don't, and then you at some point sign a contract, or your agent will sign the contract on your behalf. And then congratulations, you've been hired. So yeah, those are all of the steps involved in a job being cast. And you, hopefully, actor watching this, being cast in a role. So how do we as actors fit into that chain? The key thing that we do to help us get acting jobs in the submission process is by actually, you know, submitting ourselves for roles. Because if we don't submit, it's like any kind of job. Like if you don't apply for a job, you can't get the job, right? The main number one thing is checking job sites, checking castings to see what is being cast right now and seeing if you're right for it. And then if you're unrepresented, you can submit yourself, or if you see something that you want to be submitted for, you can go to your agent, if you have an agent, and be like, hey, can you submit me for this? I'm really interested, I know it's casting. The second thing we can do to help ourselves in this chain when it comes to the submission process is keeping track of what shows are coming up. Especially when it comes to bigger shows, shows can be announced quite far in advance of when they'll open. And whilst sometimes by the time they're announced, like they may be well into the casting process, they may have even already been cast, sometimes they haven't. So it's always good to keep up to date with not casting announcements, with show announcements to see what's coming up. The third thing that we can be doing in terms of the submission process is writing to casting directors. It means that casting directors know that you exist. So for projects where a casting director is being hired, if a casting director knows you exist, then they're more likely to think of you and be like, oh, maybe let's invite them to audition, than if they don't know you exist. You're upping your chances, you're increasing your odds that of all the talented people that submit themselves, you will be one of the names that gets to the audition phase. In terms of timing, there's no kind of set timing. I remember, I think I read this somewhere. When I first started, it was like, if you know the casting director, like you've auditioned for them before, every 3 months. If you don't know them, every 6 months. I guess that's like a good benchmark, so you're not like constantly bombarding people with correspondence. Really good times, especially if you're like, I have nothing to say. Times where you have something to say are when you have new headshots, when you have a new reel, or when you're in something, either to invite them, or to just be like, I've just finished filming for this, it's coming out at this time. Those are the 3 big times where you have news, you have tangible things to be like, hey, this. Lastly, on submissions is actually writing submissions. The big thing with writing submissions is it's not about how much you want the job. So what you don't want is that, you know, this would be a dream role for me. I've loved Sondheim's work since I was 5. I think I would learn a lot from this, from doing this show, because I've just come out of drama school. No. What skills does the role require? How can you demonstrate those skills? Like, what have you done either in your training or in previous work that shows those skills? If you genuinely have a connection with the work or with the show or with the company, at the end, you can say, lastly, I've been following this company's work for a really long time and I really like the work they do, so I would love to be involved and be considered. But that is not the meat and potatoes. That is like the herby garnish on the top of the meal, right? The second part of the chain where we're involved as actors is obviously the audition. I think it kind of goes without saying, but yeah, this is the big point where as actors we are the most involved in the chain of events as a whole. As I said, I'm gonna do this as a separate video because I think this is the thing that is the big thing. It's deserving of its own video. What I will say here in this video is the 2 things that are universal whether it's stage, screen, musicals, plays, TV show, feature film, student film, is number one, be prepared with whatever material they ask you to prepare with each audition, whether it's, you know, sing one of your own songs in this style, whether it's here are some sides from the play or from the film or from the show. Make sure that you are as prepared as you can be with the time you've been given. Obviously, if it's a tight turnaround, there's only so much you can do. If you've got a longer amount of time, use that time to the best of your ability, with the understanding that, you know, you have life, like you may have work, you may have other responsibilities. Obviously, do the best that you can, but make sure you do the best that you can and you are as prepared as possible. And the second thing I'll say for this video is turn up on time. Again, obviously life happens. If there's any inkling that you may be late, if you're self-represented, you should have the contact information of the team, contact them. Or if you're represented, let your agent know so they can contact them, especially if you're traveling from further away. Build in contingency time if you can, if it's possible, to try and mitigate if there are any unexpected delays. Those are the two things I'm going to say about the audition aspect in this video. Like I said, I will be making a video specifically on that, so stay tuned. As soon as it's ready, there'll be a link in the description so that you can click onto it. The last bit in the chain that we're involved in as actors is accepting or not accepting the job, right? And I think this is really important because at the end of the day, we are the ones who have the final decision on whether we do a job or not, which is really easy to forget because I think there's so many aspects of our work and that how the industry is run where actors can feel really disempowered, and we're not, because we can be like, thanks but no thanks if we really, really want to. So the first thing I would say when it comes to accepting work is check your contract, especially if you're not represented, if you're self-represented. If you are a member of Equity, which is the Actors Union, you have access to all of the equity agreements. That can be a really good place to just look at the equity contracts, because you don't get sent those. It's just like, it's as per this equity contract, and then the only things that would be like specified are any show specific things that wouldn't be in the form contract. So if you're on an equity contract and you're self-represented and you are an equity member and you have no idea what the form contracts are, definitely read those. But even if you're not going to be employed on an equity contract, it can be really useful to compare with the closest relevant equity agreement if you're unsure about certain things. So, you know, if you want to see if the pay is roughly equitable, or if you know, things like that, it can be a good comparison. Your agent should be well versed in the standard contracts, both equity and non-equity contracts. They should be well versed and well aware of what is standard practice. So if there is anything that's like, that's not fair, they can advocate for you. If you're not a member of Equity, but you have questions about your contract that you've been offered, or even if you're just like, I don't know anything about this and I've been offered my first ever acting job and I don't have an agent and I don't know what I'm doing, still contact Equity. Equity are quite good, I think, because they know that they kind of need to help all actors, not just their union members, because the membership is shocking, to be quite frank. In terms of numbers, I can't guarantee this, I don't work for Equity, but I'm sure that if you went to Equity and said like, look, I'm a new actor, this is my first job, it's my first contract, I don't know if this is fair or not, can you let me know if this is fair? I'm sure that they would help you out with that. You're protected by the law, like just general employment law of whatever country you're in, right? You have rights, so if you're not an Equity member, reach out to Equity. If they're not able to help you, look up what the general employment laws are where you are in your country, to see even just the bare minimum as an employee employed under a contract. What are you entitled to? You can also ask the person who's giving you the contract if there's anything you just don't understand in the wording. You can ask them to explain things as well. Arguably, they have a vested interest in, you know, wording things in a way that's going to sound favorable, so you accept their terms and don't challenge anything. But like, if there's literally, this says this, what does this actually mean in practice? Like, feel free to ask questions there as well as part of the negotiating process. Speaking of negotiating, know what you want to negotiate on and be reasonable with this. Like, if you're being offered, so you've auditioned for and you've been offered a role in a 3-person TIE, which is Theatre in Education tour. So you're going to be touring schools with this show. There's no stage management. All 3 actors have to share the driving because you're going up and down the country, and you'll obviously have to do the get-ins and get-outs of the set because there is no stage manager. That's probably going to have been communicated before you're offered the job. If it hasn't, then that's a red flag. But let's assume you knew from the jump that that's what you would have to do with this role. You can't then just turn around and try and negotiate, I'm not gonna drive and I'm not gonna do get-ins and get-outs. That's the way that that job has been budgeted for and organised. They're not gonna turn around and be like, okay, you don't have to do those things, we're gonna hire an extra person to be a stage manager, or we're just going to expect the other 2 actors to do those things because you don't want to do them. That wouldn't be fair. So be reasonable and realistic, and if a job on paper during the audition phase is like, I don't really want to do that, then don't audition for it. Obviously things happen, you know, you might audition for something in good faith and then when the offer comes through realize, actually no, this isn't actually going to work with where I am right now and what I want to be doing. But to the best of your ability, like, have a think. Have a think about, okay, this is what the job is. Do I actually want to do this job? Are the concessions that I'd want reasonable in terms of what this job actually is, right? The last thing I will say on this point is that a job isn't guaranteed until the contract is signed. Anything can happen between you getting the verbal offer and you verbally accepting it and you signing the contract, and until the contract is signed, you have no protections or recourse under the law if anything goes wrong. This is not to say you shouldn't celebrate when you get offered a job. I did that yesterday when I found out I got a job. I was like, yay! So that's not to say you can't be happy and you can't go forward being like, oh yes, I've got a job coming up. But the job isn't guaranteed until the contract is signed. So in terms of auditioning for things that may clash and things like that, especially if a job is for like months away, like it's summer, there's already jobs auditioning and like offers being put out for stuff at Christmas. It's May. It's not even summer, it's spring. Until the contract is signed, you shouldn't necessarily like not be submitting yourself or asking to be submitted or going to auditions for dates further on down the line that may clash with this job offer, because if that job then falls through but you've auditioned for nothing else, you then have no work, right? If you're partway through an audition process and then the contract comes through and you sign it, they will just go to the people and be like, unfortunately, my client's no longer available for this. Thank you so much for, you know, seeing them for audition, but they're now no longer available for the dates of this project. It's fine. Everyone in the business understands that that's how this works, right? So especially if you're self-represented, don't take yourself out of future opportunities because you have verbally accepted a job until you have signed the contract, because you don't want to be shooting yourself in the foot. So those are all the things that we can do that are kind of in the chain of events that lead to work. But there are 2 other things that we as actors should be doing that don't really fit in to that process, but are still helpful things to do. So I thought I'd mention them. The first thing, if you're not represented, is to submit yourself to agents. This is something that obviously helps in the getting a job process, because agents, you know, they submit actors for jobs for a living. They're going to be very good at what they do. Agents offer more doors to different opportunities. I think I want to make a separate video about, you know, the way especially casting sites like Spotlight work, in terms of, you know, there are some jobs that only agents or actors with agents can see, for example. But that's a separate discussion in a separate video. But essentially, an agent is going to be really, really helpful. It's always better to be self-represented than to have a bad agent, but I would argue that having a mediocre agent is better than being self-represented, because you can always still submit yourself for things and get your own work with a naff agent. As long as your agent isn't being actively detrimental to how you want your career to go, like, having an agent is always a useful thing. A legitimate agent, not an agent that rips you off. I made a video about that. If you want more info about agents, go see that video. Is it this side or that side? Oh, I always get confused. It's somewhere up in the corners. But yeah, if you want more info on agents, I will link that. And then the second thing that you can be doing in general is going to classes. Not only does this keep your skills up, so when an audition comes through, you're not like, oh crap, I haven't sung in 6 months, what do I do? But also it's great for kind of general networking, feeling in community with other creatives, especially if you don't get that from things like your resting job, for example. You know, feeling that you're in it and you're doing the thing, even if you're not in a production or you're not filming at the moment, like, you're doing the thing. It can be very very motivating. So that is how the process from a job being created to an actor getting that job kind of goes, and what we as actors can do to help us along in that process so that we are the actor who gets that job. I hope you found this video helpful and clear. Let me know in the comments if there's any particular aspect of that kind of chain of events that you want a separate video on. Obviously, as I said, I'm going to be doing one on the audition process specifically, but if there are any other aspects, let me know down in the comments and I can either link you to a video if I've already covered it, or I can make one if I haven't. If you did enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Would love to have you on the channel. Come on down. Check out Benjamin Button. It's great as the show of the week, the show of the day. I should probably call it the show of the day because I'm not doing weekly videos because I don't have time. So check out the show of the day. Stay tuned for more theatre content from a UK perspective, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye, friends!